Shayla's hands trembled as she gripped the mop handle, her knuckles turning pale against her dark skin. The manager's voice echoed through the marble corridor of Esposito Enterprises, each word a lash against her dignity. "You missed a spot again. Are you incompetent or just lazy?" She wanted to respond, to defend herself, but the words caught in her throat. She needed this job. Her daughter's medication cost $300 a week, and this was her third job of the day. She was exhausted, running on 4 hours of sleep and black coffee, but she couldn't afford to lose this position. The manager stepped closer, his expensive shoes clicking against the floor she'd just cleaned. "People like you should be grateful we even—" The sentence died mid-air. Every person in the hallway froze. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Shayla looked up and saw him, the man everyone whispered about, but few had actually seen. Carlo Esposito stood at the end of the corridor, his presence filling the space like a storm about to break. His dark eyes locked onto the scene before him, and something dangerous flickered across his face. "My office," he said quietly, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Now." Shayla's heart pounded. She didn't know if he meant her or the manager, but she was about to find out that this moment would change everything. Before we discover what happened behind that closed office door, and how a single moment of injustice led to an unexpected love story, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every view helps bring more stories like this one to life. Shayla Jenkins had perfected the art of being invisible. In her 28 years, she'd learned that for women who looked like her, dark-skinned, poor, working 3 jobs, invisibility was survival. The less people noticed you, the less they could hurt you. She arrived at Esposito Enterprises every evening at 6, after finishing her shift at the diner and before her overnight stocking job at the warehouse. The luxury office building in downtown Manhattan was her favorite job, if only because it was quiet. Most employees had gone home by the time she arrived with her cleaning cart, leaving her alone with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a city she could never afford to truly live in. Tonight started like any other. She clocked in through the service entrance, changed into her uniform and began her rounds on the 15th floor. The silence was peaceful, broken only by the gentle swish of her mop and the distant hum of the air conditioning. She was humming softly, an old gospel song her grandmother used to sing, when she heard the elevator ding. Footsteps approached, not the quiet shuffle of other cleaning staff, but the confident click of expensive shoes. Shayla kept her head down, focusing on the section of floor near the executive offices. She'd learned early that maintenance workers were like furniture to people in suits, present but unworthy of acknowledgement. "Excuse me." The voice was different from what she expected. Deep, with a slight accent she couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe. She looked up and her breath caught. The man standing before her was striking in a way that seemed almost unfair. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair styled perfectly and a jawline that could cut glass. But it was his eyes that held her. Dark, intense, and currently fixed on her with an attention that made her skin prickle with awareness. "Yes, sir." She kept her voice neutral, professional. "The conference room on this floor, has it been cleaned yet?" "Not yet, sir. I usually do the executive offices last. I can prioritize it if you need." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, as if he hadn't expected her to speak in complete sentences. "No need, I was just checking." He paused and she felt his gaze sweep over her, not in the leering way she was used to from some men, but with a different kind of intensity, like he was actually seeing her. "You work late?" "Yes, sir. 6 to midnight, Monday through Friday." "That's a long shift." She wanted to tell him it was actually her second shift, that she'd already worked 8 hours before arriving here, and that she'd work another 4 after leaving, but she'd learned not to overshare with people who lived in penthouses and drove cars that cost more than her entire existence. "I manage," she said simply. He nodded slowly, still watching her with that unnerving intensity. "What's your name?" "Shayla, sir." "Shayla Jenkins." "Shayla." He repeated it like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. "I'm Carlo." She knew who he was. Everyone who worked in this building knew Carlo Esposito, the owner, the boss, the man whose family name was whispered with equal parts respect and fear throughout the city. She'd seen his photograph in the lobby, but the picture hadn't captured the sheer presence of him. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Esposito." "Carlo," he corrected, and there was something in his tone that made it sound less like a suggestion and more like a command. Before she could respond, another elevator dinged. A man in a suit stepped out, mid-40s, with the self-important air of someone who'd climbed the corporate ladder and enjoyed looking down at those below. "Mr. Esposito," the man's voice carried fake enthusiasm. "I didn't realize you were in the building. I was just finishing some reports." "Marcus." Carlo's tone cooled noticeably. "Working late?" "Always, sir, you know me. Dedicated to the company." Marcus's eyes flickered to Shayla, and his expression soured. "I see you've met our cleaning staff. I apologize if she was in your way. These people don't always understand professional boundaries." Shayla felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her expression neutral. She'd heard worse. She'd survived worse. "Actually," Carlo said, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet, "I stopped to speak with her. She wasn't in my way at all." Marcus blinked, clearly confused by this response. "Oh, well, I just wanted to make sure." "Everything is fine, Marcus. You can go home now." It wasn't a suggestion. Marcus nodded quickly, shot one more disdainful look at Shayla, and hurried toward the elevators. When they were alone again, Carlo turned back to her. "Does he bother you often?" "I don't know what you mean, sir." "Carlo," he corrected again. "And yes, you do." She met his eyes and saw something there that surprised her, genuine concern mixed with barely controlled anger. Not at her, but for her. "It's nothing I can't handle," she said quietly. "That's not what I asked." Before she could answer, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at it. A text from her babysitter. "Mia's fever is back. Should I give her the medicine?" Panic fluttered in her chest. Her daughter had been sick for 3 days, and the clinic visit had cost $200 she didn't have. "Everything okay?" Carlo asked, and she realized her distress must have shown on her face. "Yes, sir, just my daughter. She's not feeling well." "How old?" 5. Something shifted in his expression. "You should go to her." "I can't leave my shift early. I need this job." "I own the building, Shayla. I think I can authorize one early departure." She stared at him, searching for the catch. In her experience, men who looked like him and had power like his didn't offer kindness without expecting something in return, but his expression remained open, genuine. "I don't want special treatment," she said carefully. "It's not special treatment. It's human decency." He pulled out his phone. "What's your supervisor's number?" "Mr. Esposito." "Carlo." "Carlo," she corrected, feeling strange saying his name so informally. "I appreciate the offer, but I can wait until midnight. My babysitter can handle it." He studied her for a long moment, and she had the unsettling feeling he could see straight through her brave front to the terrified mother beneath. "Fine," he said finally. "But if you need to leave early, my direct number is—" He pulled a business card from his wallet and handed it to her. "Call me. Any time." She took the card, her fingers brushing his for a brief second. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her system. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once, then walked toward the executive offices. She watched him go, his card still warm in her hand, and wondered what kind of man gave his personal number to a cleaning woman he'd just met. The kind, she thought, who just made her 3-job life infinitely more complicated. 3 days later, Shayla was scrubbing the floor outside the executive conference room when she heard the shouting. "I don't care what your excuse is. This report was due yesterday, and you're telling me it won't be ready until next week." She recognized Marcus's voice, sharp and cruel. Her hands tightened on the mop handle. She should move along, find another area to clean. Getting involved in office drama was a quick way to lose a job. But then she heard the other voice, younger, female, trembling with suppressed tears. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison. My mother had emergency surgery and I had to—" "Your personal problems are not my concern. If you can't handle the responsibilities of this position, perhaps you should look for work elsewhere, somewhere more suitable for your capabilities." The emphasis on suitable made Shayla's blood boil. She knew that tone. She'd heard it her entire life, the coded language of people who thought certain individuals belonged in certain places. She shouldn't get involved. She had Mia to think about, bills to pay, a life that couldn't afford disruption. But then she heard the young woman crying, and Shayla thought about every time someone had spoken to her that way, every time she'd swallowed her dignity and accepted disrespect because she couldn't afford to fight back. She opened the conference room door. Marcus stood with his arms crossed, looming over a young Asian woman who couldn't have been more than 22. The woman's eyes were red, her hands clutching a stack of folders. "Excuse me," Shayla said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I need to clean this room." Marcus spun around, his face flushing with anger. "Can't you see we're in the middle of a meeting? Come back later. Building policy says all conference rooms must be cleaned by 8 p.m. It's 7:55. It wasn't actually policy, but she bet he didn't know that. "I don't care about your schedule. Get out." "Sir, I'm just doing my job." "Your job?" Marcus stepped toward her, his voice rising. "Your job is to be invisible until we need you. Your job is to clean up our messes and be grateful you're even allowed in this building. People like you should—" "That's enough." The voice came from the doorway, cold and absolute. Carlo Esposito stood there, his presence filling the room like a physical force. He was in a dark suit, his tie loosened slightly, and his expression was terrifying in its calm. "Mr. Esposito." Marcus's demeanor changed instantly, his aggression evaporating into nervous deference. "I didn't realize you were in my own building?" Carlo's eyes never left Marcus's face. "Yes, I tend to be here often, and I tend to notice when my employees are being harassed." "I wasn't harassing anyone. I was just having a conversation with someone who needs to clean this room according to building policy," Carlo said smoothly, "and with a junior analyst whose mother just had emergency surgery, both of whom you were treating with shocking disrespect." The young woman looked up, her eyes widening. Shayla stood frozen, unsure whether to feel relieved or terrified. "Sir, I can explain. My office, now." Carlo's tone left no room for argument. Then his eyes shifted to Shayla and the young analyst. "Both of you can finish your work here. Take your time." Marcus paled but said nothing, following Carlo out of the room. The door closed behind them with a quiet click that somehow sounded louder than a slam. The young analyst let out a shaky breath. "Thank you," she whispered to Shayla. "You didn't have to—" "Yes, I did," Shayla said softly. "Are you okay?" "I will be, I think." The woman managed a weak smile. "I'm Jennifer, by the way." "Shayla." After Jennifer left, Shayla finished cleaning the conference room, her mind racing. She shouldn't have intervened. She'd put a target on her back. Marcus would remember her face, remember that she'd challenged him, and men like that didn't forget humiliation. She was loading her cart to move to the next floor when her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Shayla Jenkins?" The voice was professional, female. "Yes? This is Susan from Mount Sinai Emergency Room. We have your daughter here. She collapsed at home and the babysitter brought her in. Her fever spiked to 105 degrees. The world tilted. I'm coming right now." She abandoned her cart and ran for the stairs, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Mia, her baby. 105 degrees. Children died from fevers like that. Children stopped breathing and never woke up, and she burst into the lobby, frantically looking for the exit. "Shayla." She turned. Carlo stood near the security desk, his expression shifting from neutral to alarmed in an instant. "What's wrong?" "My daughter. Hospital. I have to—" She couldn't form complete sentences. Tears blurred her vision. "I have to go." She didn't wait for a response. She ran for the exit, hitting the sidewalk at full speed. The hospital was 40 blocks away. The subway would take 20 minutes. A cab would cost money she didn't have, but she didn't care. She'd walk if she had to. She'd run the whole way. She'd made it half a block when a black SUV pulled up beside her. The window rolled down, and Carlo leaned out. "Get in." "I can't." "Shayla, get in the car." Something in his voice, not commanding but urgent, made her obey. She yanked the door open and climbed in. The driver accelerated before she'd even closed the door properly. "Mount Sinai," Carlo said, and the driver nodded. Shayla pressed her hands against her face, trying to control her breathing. She couldn't fall apart, not yet. Not until she knew Mia was okay. "Tell me what happened," Carlo said quietly. "Fever. She's had a fever for days, but I couldn't afford to miss work. I gave her medicine from the drugstore, but it wasn't enough. The babysitter called, said she collapsed. 105 degrees. That's dangerous. Her voice broke. She felt Carlo's hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. "She's going to be fine," he said with a certainty she desperately wanted to believe. "You don't know that." "No," he admitted, "but I know Mount Sinai has excellent doctors, and I know your daughter has a mother who would run 40 blocks to get to her. That kind of love is powerful." The SUV wove through traffic with an efficiency that suggested the driver had done this before. They reached the hospital in 8 minutes. Impossible for regular traffic, but Carlo apparently operated outside regular rules. He walked with her into the emergency room, his presence parting the chaos of the waiting area like Moses with the Red Sea. A doctor approached immediately, and Shayla realized he was responding to Carlo, not to her. "Mr. Esposito, we didn't know you were—" "The little girl who came in with the high fever. Mia Jenkins. Where is she?" The doctor checked his tablet. "Room 7. She's stable now. We got her temperature down. She has a severe ear infection that spread. We're starting antibiotics." Shayla's legs nearly gave out with relief. Carlo's hand steadied her elbow. "Can I see her?" "Of course. Right this way." Room 7 was small and sterile, but Shayla barely noticed. All she saw was Mia, her baby, her whole world, lying in a bed that seemed too big for her small body. But her eyes were open, and when she saw Shayla, she smiled weakly. "Mama." Shayla was at her side in an instant, gathering her daughter into her arms carefully, mindful of the IV in her small hand. "I'm here, baby. Mama's here." She looked up to thank Carlo, but he'd stepped back into the hallway, giving them privacy. Through the small window, she could see him on his phone, his expression serious. When the doctor returned, he had news that made Shayla's heart sink. "We need to keep her overnight for observation. The infection was quite severe, and I'm afraid," he hesitated, "without insurance, the bill for tonight will be substantial." "How substantial?" $4,000 to $5,000. Shayla felt like she'd been punched. $5,000 might as well have been $5 million. She had maybe $300 in her checking account, and that was supposed to last until her next paycheck. "I'll figure it out," she said, her voice hollow. "It's handled." She turned. Carlo stood in the doorway. "I'm sorry?" "The bill. It's handled." "Mr. Esposito, I can't let you— You're not letting me do anything. I'm doing it." His tone left no room for argument. "Your daughter needs treatment. She's getting treatment. That's all that matters. I'll pay you back. Every cent. He crossed the room in 3 strides, crouching beside her chair so they were at eye level. His dark eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Listen to me carefully, Shayla. You take care of your daughter. That's your only job tonight. Do you understand? Why are you doing this?" Something flickered across his face, an emotion she couldn't quite name. "Because I can, and because no child should suffer, because her mother can't afford medicine." He stood, nodding to the doctor. "Whatever she needs, the best care, and I want regular updates." Before Shayla could protest again, he was gone. She looked down at Mia, who was already drifting back to sleep, her fever finally broken. Her daughter was safe. That was all that mattered. But as she held Mia's small hand, Shayla couldn't stop thinking about dark eyes and impossible kindness, and the dangerous feeling blooming in her chest that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with something she couldn't afford to feel. Shayla returned to work 3 days later, expecting to find a pink slip in her locker. Instead, she found a note from her supervisor. "Take the week off. Paid. Boss's orders." She stared at the note for a full minute, her mind spinning. This couldn't be real. Cleaning women didn't get paid time off. They got fired for missing shifts and replaced within hours. But when she checked her bank account that afternoon, an additional week's salary had been deposited. Carlo Esposito was either the most generous man she'd ever met or the most dangerous. Probably both. Mia recovered quickly on the antibiotics, her energy returning in bursts that had Shayla chasing her around their tiny 1-bedroom apartment. The medical bills never materialized. When Shayla called the hospital, they told her the account had been settled in full. She didn't know how to feel about that. Grateful, yes, but also uneasy. In her experience, people didn't give without expecting something in return. When she finally returned to Esposito Enterprises the following Monday, she was determined to thank Carlo and establish boundaries. She couldn't afford to be in debt to a man like him, not financially and certainly not emotionally. She spotted him in the lobby, talking to 2 men in expensive suits. They looked like him, sharp, dangerous, powerful. But even among them, Carlo stood out. He carried himself differently, with an authority that didn't need to announce itself. She waited until he was alone before approaching. "Mr. Esposito?" He turned, and his expression shifted immediately from cold business to something warmer. "Shayla, how's Mia?" "Much better, thanks to you." She took a breath. "I wanted to thank you for everything, the hospital bills, the time off, but I also need to discuss repayment terms. I can't accept—" We're not discussing repayment. Mr. Esposito. Carlo. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I appreciate what you did. More than you know. But I don't take handouts. It's not a handout. Consider it a company benefit. Cleaning staff don't get benefits. They do now. His jaw set in a way that suggested he wasn't used to being argued with. I've already spoken to HR. All maintenance staff now have basic health insurance. She blinked. What? You heard me. It's been implemented as of today. You changed company policy because it was the right thing to do. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. Do you have any idea how many people work in this building who are one emergency away from financial ruin? Your situation opened my eyes. I should have done this years ago. Shayla didn't know what to say. Men like him didn't change entire company policies because a cleaning woman's daughter got sick. Why do you care? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Because I spent my childhood watching my mother work herself to death for people who never even learned her name. Because I know what it's like to be invisible. And because... He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. Because everyone deserves dignity, Shayla. Even people my employees think they can shout at. She realized he was talking about Marcus. What happened to him? He no longer works here. You fired him? Because of me? I fired him because he violated company policy and created a hostile work environment. You just happened to be brave enough to witness it. Carlo's expression softened slightly. How are you really doing? The question caught her off guard. Not how's your daughter or are you ready to work on, but how was she doing? When was the last time someone had asked her that? Tired, she admitted. Always tired. 3 jobs. 3 jobs, 1 daughter, 1 tiny apartment with a radiator that doesn't work. But we're okay. We survive. Surviving isn't living. It's all I can afford. He studied her for a long moment, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he was seeing too much, past her defenses to the exhaustion and fear she worked so hard to hide. Have dinner with me. She nearly dropped her cleaning supplies. I'm sorry. Dinner. Tomorrow night. Just... He seemed almost uncertain, which was strange on a man who radiated confidence. Just dinner, no expectations. I'd like to get to know you better. Mr. Esposito. Carlo. And before you say no, think about it. When was the last time someone took you out? When was the last time you did something just for yourself? I have a daughter to take care of. Bring her. That stopped her. What? Bring Mia. We'll go somewhere she'd enjoy. I know a place in Little Italy that has the best pasta in the city. Family-friendly. Completely innocent. Shayla's mind raced. This was a bad idea. A terrible idea. Men like Carlo Esposito didn't have dinner with women like her unless they wanted something. But when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see calculation or ulterior motives. She saw genuine interest. And God help her, she wanted to say yes. When was the last time a man had looked at her like she was worth knowing? When was the last time someone had tried to make her smile instead of just giving her orders? 1 dinner, she heard herself say, but I'm paying for myself. His smile was slow and devastating. We'll see about that. The restaurant was small and tucked away on a side street in Little Italy, with red-checked tablecloths and the kind of authentic atmosphere that came from generations of family ownership. Mia was enchanted immediately, her eyes wide as she took in the murals on the walls and the mouth-watering smells coming from the kitchen. Carlo had arrived exactly on time to pick them up, driving himself in a sleek black car that probably cost more than Shayla would make in 10 years. But he'd helped Mia with her seatbelt, with unexpected gentleness, and he'd complimented Shayla's simple dress without making her feel self-conscious about shopping at Goodwill. Now, watching him order in fluent Italian with the elderly waiter, making Mia giggle when he taught her how to say buonasera, Shayla felt something shift in her chest. This was dangerous. So dangerous. Your daughter is beautiful, Carlo said after the waiter left. She has your smile. She has her father's eyes. The words slipped out before Shayla could stop them. Where is he? Gone. He left before she was born. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. She kept her tone neutral, matter of fact. She'd learned not to let the abandonment hurt anymore. Carlo's jaw tightened. He's an idiot. He's free, she said quietly, and we're better off without him. Mama works hard, Mia piped up, her voice serious. She has 3 jobs. I know, Carlo said gently. Your mama is one of the strongest people I've ever met. Mia beamed at that, and Shayla felt her defenses cracking. The food arrived, plates of fresh pasta, homemade bread, and for Mia a pizza shaped like a teddy bear that made her squeal with delight. Carlo watched them eat with an expression Shayla couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked finally. "I'm just thinking about how different your life is from mine." "That's an understatement. I meant it as a compliment. You've built something real, a family, love. Those are things money can't buy," says the man who's never had to choose between food and medicine. She hadn't meant it to sound so sharp, but Carlo didn't flinch. "You're right," he said quietly. "I've never had to make those choices, but I've watched people I love destroy themselves trying to. My mother worked 4 jobs to keep food on the table after my father was killed. She died of a heart attack at 47, cleaning someone's kitchen. I was 15. Shayla's breath caught. "I'm sorry. Don't be. It made me who I am. It taught me that the people who work the hardest are often valued the least. That needed to change." "So you became what you are?" "What am I, Shayla?" She met his eyes. "Powerful, dangerous, someone people whisper about. And that scares you?" "It should. But does it?" She wanted to say yes. She wanted to be smart and self-protective and run far away from whatever this was. But the truth was, sitting across from Carlo Esposito, watching him make her daughter laugh and talk about his mother with raw honesty, she'd never felt safer in her life. "I don't know," she whispered. His hand reached across the table, palm up. An invitation, not a demand. After a moment's hesitation, she placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady. "I don't want to scare you," he said softly. "I want to know you, the real you. Not the woman who's learned to be invisible, but the one underneath, the one who stands up to bullies even when it could cost her everything, the one who runs through traffic to get to her daughter. That woman fascinates me." "Why?" "Because she's brave in ways I'll never be." Mia chose that moment to knock over her water glass, breaking the intensity of the moment. They both moved to clean it up, laughing as Mia apologized profusely. The waiter brought extra napkins and a fresh glass, waving off their concerns with typical Italian warmth. But under the table, Carlo's hand found hers again, and this time, Shayla didn't let go. By the time they left the restaurant, Mia was half asleep against Shayla's shoulder, her stomach full and her heart happy. Carlo insisted on driving them home, and Shayla was too tired to argue. When they pulled up outside her building, a 4-story walk-up in a neighborhood that gentrification hadn't reached yet, she saw him taking it in. The iron bars on the windows, the graffiti on the walls, the group of men smoking on the corner who watched the expensive car with calculating eyes. "This isn't safe," Carlo said quietly. "It's what I can afford." "Shayla, don't." She cut him off before he could offer what she knew was coming. "Don't try to rescue me, Carlo. I'm not a project. I'm not something broken that needs fixing." "That's not what I think." "Then what do you think?" He turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "I think you're the most remarkable woman I've ever met. I think 3 dates isn't nearly enough time to know you, and I think—" He stopped himself, shaking his head. "I think I'm in trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where I want things I have no right to want, where I think about you constantly, where I look for excuses to be on the 15th floor at 6 p.m. just to see you, where the thought of you cleaning floors makes me want to burn the whole building down and start over." Shayla's heart hammered against her ribs. "Carlo, I know it's too fast. I know we're from different worlds. I know 100 reasons why this is a bad idea. But I can't stop thinking about what it would be like if we were brave enough to ignore all those reasons." She should say no. She should thank him for dinner, take her daughter upstairs and never look at him like this again. Instead, she leaned across the console and kissed him. It was meant to be brief, a moment of impulse, quickly regretted. But the second her lips touched his, something ignited. His hand came up to cup her face, gentle despite the intensity of the kiss, and she felt like she was falling and being caught at the same time. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Mia stirred sleepily. "Mama, are we home?" "Yes, baby, we're home." Carlo helped carry the sleeping Mia upstairs, despite Shayla's protests. At her door, he handed her the little girl carefully, his fingers brushing Shayla's in a touch that felt more intimate than the kiss. "Thank you," she whispered, "for dinner, for everything. Shayla." He waited until she met his eyes. "I meant what I said. All of it. I know. That's what scares me. Then we'll be scared together." He leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "Buonanotte, Bella." Sweet dreams. She watched him disappear down the stairs, her lips still tingling, her heart racing. In her arms, Mia mumbled sleepily. I like him, Mama. He's nice. Yeah, baby, Shayla whispered. He is. And that, she thought, closing the door behind her, was the most dangerous thing of all. For 2 weeks, Shayla lived in a dream. Carlo called her every night. He sent flowers to her apartment. Simple daisies, not roses, because he'd remembered her mentioning they were her favorite. He arranged for Mia's daycare to be paid through the end of the year. He found excuses to be at the building during her shift, and they'd steal moments in empty conference rooms talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up in Brooklyn, about taking over his father's business at 21, about the weight of responsibility and the loneliness of power. She told him about her dreams of going to college, about her love of photography, about the future she wanted to build for Mia. They were from different worlds, but in those stolen moments, the distance between them felt surmountable, until the day Marcus Harrison returned. Shayla was cleaning the executive break room when she heard the commotion, raised voices, the sound of something breaking. She peeked out into the hallway and saw Marcus arguing with Jennifer, the young analyst he'd harassed weeks ago. You think you're safe because Esposito protected you? Marcus's voice was venomous. He'll get bored. He always does. And when he's done playing hero, I'll still be here. You don't work here anymore, Jennifer said, her voice shaking but firm. I have friends, powerful friends, and they're very interested in Esposito's recent distractions. His eyes cut to Shayla standing in the doorway, especially the ones who don't belong in his world. Ice flooded Shayla's veins. Leave, Jennifer said, or I'm calling security. Call them. But first, let me give you both some advice. Marcus stepped closer, his smile cruel. Carlo Esposito isn't a good man. He's a criminal, a killer. His family has blood on their hands going back 3 generations. And the only reason he's playing nice with the help, he looked directly at Shayla, is because he's using you to make himself feel better about the monster he really is. That's enough. The voice came from behind Marcus, cold as winter. Carlo stood at the end of the hallway, flanked by 2 large men in dark suits. His expression was terrifying in its calm. Mr. Esposito, Marcus's bravado crumbled. I was just threatening my employees, trespassing, making accusations. Carlo walked forward slowly, each step deliberate. I should call the police, but I won't. Do you know why? Marcus shook his head, his face pale. Because I want you to walk out of here on your own 2 legs. I want you to go home and think very carefully about what happens to people who threaten what's mine. Carlo's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire hallway. And I want you to understand that if you ever come near this building, or Jennifer or Shayla again, the police will be the least of your problems. Am I clear? Yes, Marcus whispered. Good. Get out. Marcus practically ran for the elevators. The moment he was gone, Carlo turned to Jennifer. Are you okay? Yes, sir, thank you. Take the rest of the day off. Paid. Jennifer nodded and hurried away, leaving Carlo and Shayla alone in the hallway. Shayla, is it true? The question came out stronger than she felt. What he said about your family? Carlo's jaw tightened. We should talk somewhere private. Answer the question. Yes. The single word hung between them like a blade. My family has a history, a complicated, bloody history, and I've spent the last 15 years trying to make us legitimate, trying to build something different. But the past doesn't disappear just because you want it to. You're a criminal. I was, he corrected quietly. I've done things I'm not proud of, hurt people who deserved it and some who probably didn't. But that's not who I am anymore. That's not who I want to be. Shayla felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. She'd known he was powerful. She'd known people feared him, but she'd let herself believe it was just business, just the ruthlessness required to succeed. What did you do? Things that would make you leave. Things I can't change. His eyes met hers, raw and honest. But I'm trying, Shayla. Every day I'm trying to be someone worthy of... He stopped himself. Worthy of what? You. The word hung in the air between them. I can't, she whispered. I have Mia to think about. I can't bring her into a world with danger and violence and... You think I'd let anything happen to either of you? Carlo took a step closer. You think I'd risk the 2 most important people in my life? We barely know each other. I know enough. I know you're brilliant and brave and stronger than anyone gives you credit for. I know Mia deserves better than a father who abandoned her and a world that will underestimate her every day of her life. I know—" his voice cracked slightly. "I know I'm falling in love with you, and it terrifies me more than anything I've ever faced." Shayla's breath caught. "Carlo, I'm not asking you to decide right now. I'm just asking you not to run. Not yet. Give me a chance to show you who I really am. All of it, the good and the bad. And then if you still want to walk away, I'll let you go." She wanted to say no. Every rational part of her brain screamed to protect herself and her daughter, but her heart was already lost, tangled up in dark eyes and gentle hands, and a man who saw her when the rest of the world looked through her. "One chance," she whispered, "but you have to be honest with me. About everything. Everything," he promised. That night, Carlo took her to his penthouse overlooking Central Park. It was stunning. All floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture, art that probably cost more than her entire building. But there were touches of warmth too. Photographs on the walls, books scattered on tables, a telescope pointed at the night sky. "My mother loved stars," he said, following her gaze. "She used to say they were proof that beautiful things could exist in darkness. She sounds wonderful." She was. He poured them both wine, then led her to the balcony. The city spread out below them, glittering and alive. "I brought you here because I want you to understand what you'd be getting into. This world, this life. It's not all danger and darkness, but those elements exist, and I can't promise they'll ever completely disappear. Tell me," Shayla said quietly. "Tell me everything." So he did. He told her about his father's death, gunned down by a rival family when Carlo was 15. He told her about taking over the business, about the violence he'd participated in and the choices he'd made. He told her about the 5-year plan he'd been executing to transition the family businesses into legitimate enterprises, real estate, technology, imports, legal, clean, safe. "I can't erase the past," he said finally, "but I can build a different future. I want to build it with you." Shayla listened to all of it, her heart aching and soaring simultaneously. She should be terrified. She should run. But all she could think about was the man who'd helped her daughter, who'd stood up for the overlooked and powerless, who was trying to be better than his bloodline demanded. "I need time," she said finally. "I need to think about what's best for Mia. I understand. But I'm not running, not yet." Relief flooded his face. He pulled her close, and she let herself lean into his strength, breathing in the scent of him. Expensive cologne, and something uniquely Carlo. "I'll wait," he murmured against her hair. "As long as you need." They stood like that for a long time, the city lights twinkling below them, two people from different worlds trying to find a way to meet in the middle. Shayla's phone buzzed. She pulled it out and froze. It was a photo of Mia at daycare playing on the playground. Nothing unusual, except for the message beneath it. "Beautiful daughter. It would be terrible if something happened to her." The phone slipped from her nerveless fingers. Carlo caught it, his expression darkening as he read the message. "Who sent this?" "I don't know. Unknown number." He was already dialing, barking orders in Italian to whoever answered. Within seconds, he had 3 more phones out, coordinating what sounded like a small army. "Pack a bag," he said to Shayla. "Now." "What? Why?" "Because someone just threatened your daughter, which means they're threatening me, and I don't take threats lightly." His eyes met hers, fierce and protective. "You're moving in here, both of you, tonight, and I'm putting security on Mia 24/7 until we find whoever sent that message." "Carlo, I can't just—" "Yes, you can, and you will, because I'm not losing you. Either of you, do you understand?" She wanted to argue, to maintain her independence, to insist she could handle this herself. But the image of that photo, some stranger watching her daughter, close enough to take pictures, made her blood run cold. "Okay," she whispered. "Good." He pulled her close, his arms steel around her. "I promise you, Shayla, no one touches what's mine. No one." And despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the completely insane situation she'd found herself in, Shayla believed him. The penthouse transformed overnight into a fortress. Men in dark suits stood at every entrance. Security cameras covered every angle. And Mia, blessedly oblivious to the danger, thought it was the most exciting adventure of her life. "Mama, this place is like a castle," she squealed, running through the spacious living room. Carlo had sent a car to pick up Mia from daycare with 2 bodyguards, a precaution that had terrified Shayla until she saw how gentle they were with her daughter, how one of them knew card tricks and made Mia laugh the entire drive. Within 24 hours, Carlo's security team had tracked down the source of the threat. Marcus had hired someone to follow Shayla, to scare her, thinking he could drive a wedge between her and Carlo. But Marcus had underestimated who he was dealing with. Carlo handled it swiftly and legally. Evidence was gathered, charges were filed, and Marcus was arrested. No violence, no threats, just the cold efficiency of a man who knew how to operate within the law when it suited him. "It's over," Carlo told her that evening, pulling her into his arms. "He's going to prison, and everyone who might have thought about following his example now knows what happens when they threaten my family. Your family. You and Mia. That's what you are to me." His eyes were intense, unwavering. "I love you, Shayla. I'm in love with you, and I want to build a life with you. A real life, safe, legal, everything I've been working toward." She looked at this man who'd changed her entire world in a matter of weeks, who'd seen her when she was invisible, who'd protected her daughter as fiercely as if she were his own, who was trying every day to be better than his past. "I love you too," she said. "I'm terrified, and it's too fast, and I don't know how this is going to work, but I love you." His smile was radiant. "Say it again. I love you, Carlo Esposito." He kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me." "What?" "Not now. Not tomorrow. But someday. When you're ready. When Mia's ready. Marry me, Shayla. Build this life with me." "That's insane." "Probably. But I've never been more certain of anything." He cupped her face in his hands. "You make me want to be better. You make me believe I can be better. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of you." She should say it was too soon. She should insist on more time. But looking into his eyes, she saw her future, safety, love, partnership, a man who would protect her daughter as fiercely as she did. "Ask me again in 6 months," she whispered, "and we'll see." 6 months, he agreed. "I can work with that." Over the following weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. Shayla enrolled in community college, starting with photography classes. Carlo hired her officially as a consultant for the company's charitable foundation, a real position with real responsibilities and a salary that made her gasp. Mia thrived in her new school, making friends and coming home every day with stories about her adventures. And Carlo was everything she'd never dared to hope for. Patient with Mia, respectful of Shayla's need for independence, slowly integrating them into his life without overwhelming them. 6 months passed in a blur of happiness. On the exact day of their 6-month anniversary, Carlo took her back to that restaurant in Little Italy, the same one where they'd had their first dinner with Mia. "Remember this place?" he asked as they sat down. "How could I forget? This is where I started falling for you." "Funny. I started falling for you the moment you stood up to Marcus in that conference room, but this is where I knew I was already gone." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Shayla Jenkins, I've waited 6 months like you asked. I've tried to prove every single day that I'm worthy of you and Mia, and now I'm asking you again." He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it. Inside was a ring, elegant, beautiful, but not ostentatious. Perfect. "Marry me. Be my wife. Let me be Mia's father. Let me spend the rest of my life loving you both." Tears streamed down her face. "Yes. Yes? Yes, Carlo. Yes to all of it." He slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her like she was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, the entire restaurant was applauding. The owner appeared with a bottle of champagne, grinning widely. "I knew it," he announced in heavily accented English. "I told my wife, these two, they're meant to be. Amore vero." True love. Shayla looked at her ring, then at Carlo, and thought about how far she'd come. From a cleaning woman working 3 jobs to survive, to a woman with a degree in progress, a daughter who was thriving, and a man who loved her with his whole heart. "What are you thinking?" Carlo asked softly. "I'm thinking about how invisible I used to be, and how you saw me anyway. You were never invisible, Bella. The world just wasn't looking closely enough." He kissed her forehead. "I'm just grateful I was smart enough to pay attention." The gallery opening was crowded with Manhattan's elite, art collectors, critics, socialites sipping champagne and examining the photographs on the walls. Shayla stood near the entrance, still not quite believing this was real. "Breathe," Carlo murmured in her ear, his hand warm on the small of her back. "You're brilliant and they're going to love your work." She'd graduated from NYU's photography program with honors and spent the last year working on this collection. Images of working-class New Yorkers, the invisible people who kept the city running, her way of honoring where she'd come from. "Mama!" Mia ran up, her fancy dress already slightly rumpled. At 8 years old, she was growing into a confident, curious child. "There's a lady who wants to buy your picture of the subway conductor." "That's wonderful, baby. And Dad said I could have ice cream after." Shayla's heart still fluttered every time Mia called Carlo Dad. He'd officially adopted her 2 years ago, and the joy on his face during the ceremony had made Shayla cry. They'd been married for 2.5 years now. The wedding had been small, just family and close friends, but perfect. Carlo had surprised her by having it at that same restaurant in Little Italy, the place where everything had begun. "So you did it," Carlo said later after the last guest had left, and Mia had fallen asleep against his shoulder. "Your first gallery show." "Our first show," she corrected. "None of this would exist without you." "That's not true. You've always had this vision. I just helped make it visible." He kissed her temple. "Are you happy, Shayla?" She thought about their life, the brownstone in Brooklyn they'd bought together, the foundation they'd started to help single mothers, Mia's thriving school life, Carlo's now completely legitimate business empire. "I'm happy," she said truthfully. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real." "It's real, and it's ours." He pulled a small box from his pocket. 3-year anniversary, the day a manager shouted, and I closed the office door. Inside was a delicate necklace with a single diamond pendant. She tilted it to the light and read the inscription, "You were never invisible." Tears pricked her eyes. "Carlo, every time the world tries to make you feel small, I want you to remember, you were always remarkable. I just had the privilege of noticing." She kissed him, not caring about the gallery or maintaining professional distance. She kissed him like he was air, and she was drowning. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you more." Impossible. As they drove home that night, Mia asleep in the back, Carlo's hand warm in hers, Shayla watched the city lights blur past and thought about transformation, about how a cleaning woman and a mafia boss had found each other across impossible divides and built something extraordinary. She'd started invisible, but Carlo had seen her, and in seeing her, he'd helped her see herself, not as someone who cleaned floors, but as someone who could create art. Not as someone who merely survived, but as someone who deserved to thrive. It wasn't the life she'd dreamed of, it was better. And as Carlo carried their sleeping daughter inside their home, Shayla silently thanked the universe for that moment 3 years ago, when a manager shouted, a boss intervened, and 2 people from impossible worlds found a way to love each other into something beautiful, something real, something like forever. This story has come to an end. If it touched your heart in any way, leave your like and share it with someone who also loves emotional stories. New stories arrive soon. Until next time.